I'm sure we appreciate very much that which was spoken by Dr. Shankar, helping us to appreciate the resonance of this particular theme, that is South Asia Connect and Collaboration. And she provided powerful evidence that that is happening. And what was interesting also was that statistic. Fastest growing region is South Asia. Obviously, there's a lot more ground or sea to travel to get to where you would want to be. And that I thought was good. So the regional collaboration makes a great deal of sense. And the other thing that was impressive for me, outsider, not a shipper, was the science that is being brought to bear. And you referred to the marine ecosystems and those tantalizing possibilities with energy conservation methodologies that you outlined. But there is so much potential in taking those things forward. So I'd like to say thank you very much for those emphases. And you may or may not be aware, but I'm happy to say that this event today is a carbon negative event. That's what it is. And such has been achieved with the patronage of Planetary Carbon Standard, which is an organization, and they're here. They're represented here. So thank you very much. Now we focus on a little wider range and scope on our theme and the topic. So this is under the subject matter, Macroeconomy of South Asia, Importance of Connectivity for National Economies. And we have several who will now occupy the stage and form the panel. So we're very happy to invite on stage our chief guest, Governor, Western Province, Mr. Hanif Yusuf. We're joined by our guest of honor, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Governor, Central Bank. And we have another of our guests of honor, and I owe him a debt of an apology for not recognizing him immediately. The Deputy High Commissioner for India, Dr. Satyanjal Pandey. We invite you also to take the stage. And Dr. Shankar, who we just heard, the Vice Chancellor, Indian Maritime University. We also have a special guest who will also be included in the panel, the Regional Indo-Pacific Strategy Coordinator with the Embassy of the United States, Mr. Dustin Bickle. May we invite you also. And Jonathan, yes, who you heard earlier, Jonathan Goldner, will also be in the panel. And to moderate the session, we would like very much to invite the CEO of the Advocata Institute, a very well-known figure nowadays, and speaks quite a number of topics that relate to the economy. Very happy to invite Dhananath Fernando. So over to him, and he takes the session forward. Over to you, Dhananath.
Thank you very much, Arun. Earlier, former Speaker Jayasuriya mentioned Sri Lanka has been located at a strategic place by the God, that rest of it has to build by us. I thought our panel discussion was also placed at a just right slot, because it's extreme bad weather outside and good company by a lot of geopolitical representation, private sector, academia, and at the same time, there's mouth-watering food outside and a bar, but it will not be opened till we finish the panel discussion. So we all are squeezed into this slot, and I welcome all of you. But I would like to start without taking much of time, because we have 1 hour and we have extremely influential and thoughtful guests on our discussion. Governor Yusuf, I would like to first know, you have been a master of this game. You know inside out on this industry, and now from being a senior businessman, you have taken the task to be the governor of the Western Province. And if you were to influence few key policies to build this industry, taking this industry to the next stage. Let's not kid ourselves. Mr. Masakorala said we are just 2% in terms of contribution, and we all know we are not right there. We are just trying to explore and get it to somewhere that Sri Lanka can get a meaningful impact. What would you prioritize? Which policies do you recommend to influence or enhance with your new role?
Thank you, Dana. I've been fighting, as you know, on the maritime side for many, many years. We rest on our laurels, on our geographical locations that we have been blessed with. We keep talking about the long years of history that we have in this country. But while everybody around us is going leaps and bounds. So in my new position as the governor of the Western Province, I'm trying to exercise the things that I was telling others to do that I could do myself. Number one, like Dr. Shankar said, ambitious plans. Like about India, ambitious plans. And that's for Western Province because the port and the airport is not my mandate. I wish it was, but it's not my mandate. All I can do is to facilitate connectivity to the port and airport. So this is what I'm trying to concentrate to change, transform few things on the transportation within the Western Province. Western Province has 44% of the GDP. This is the heartbeat of the business economy of the country. So what do? Maritime hub to be done. I can rattle off. We still are struggling with a single window platform, which we don't have. We have, we talk about exports business, and the government wants to take have a 45 billion export economy, they say, within 5 years. I'm conveying it to the audience, I'm conveying to myself, I'm conveying to the government that the port and the airport are one of the biggest revenues that we can come to that. So we need a lot of work to be done. I will leave these port things to the experts now. My one is the Western Province. Make it clean, make it efficient, make it safe for women, and transform in such a way that the people would come and invest. As I speak, the Indian embassy has been very helpful. The Chinese embassy has been very helpful. That we bring in people from Pune or from Gujarat and from other places. We have been very successful into the countries because all I'm interested in is to make sure that the province gets more investments. When I get more investments and my connectivity to the port and the airport are solid, it will help in my little contribution to the maritime industry.
Thank you, Governor Yusuf. Thank you very much for those insightful thoughts. Next, I would like to move to Governor Veera Singh, and also in many panel discussions, I have been with so many ministers, Minister of Ports, Minister of Energy, and this time is the first time I am sitting with two governors, Governor of the Western Province and Governor of the Central Bank. Governor, I would like to know, it was said, stability is not everything, but without stability, everything is nothing. And you went through that hard process since 2022 with the economic crisis, and we all know when the currency depreciates by like 2 cents, of course, how many queries and articles published by newspapers on what's going to happen to the economy and all that. So, is there any particular reforms coming with the central bank independence that could facilitate the maritime industry in Sri Lanka, the service industry? I know your mandate is mainly to keep the inflation on target and provide the monetary system stable. And at the same time, with the stability that you brought in, taking the leadership, are there still any worries where you wake up in the middle of the night and you're still worried, like, okay, inflation is down, reserves are building, exchange rate is under control, but you still worry things? I would like to start from you.
Thank you, Dana. First of all, I was wondering when I invited, what was it, or the panel, what kind of questions you could ask me, because this is about logistics, nothing to do with the central banking. So, I mean, you did very well trying to connect this thing with the stability. I think the key question that you asked about what worries me at this point, I think if I can share with you what worried me, say about 2 years ago, or last 2 years, 2.5 years since I took over the position. I can remember Rohan and his old friends coming to me all the time, asking to allocate some foreign exchange to buy certain things for export and other industries, essential industries. There are a lot of worries those days. They should look at the journey that we have been going through in the last, since 2022. I think still, obviously, as central banker, His job is to worry about the economy. That's part of the job. But when I think about the worries and concerns compared to you, I think I can say I am much more relaxed now compared to the very tough situation we had in the last several years, especially last couple of years. For example, now, if you look at from the point of unsustainable sovereign debt and foreign exchange crisis, as well as very high inflation, large fiscal deficits, and the famous topic that you also talk about, the money printing and all these things. And I think we have been able to, in a structured manner, have been able to address a lot of serious concerns. And I think now we are at a point where the stability we have almost been able to achieve. But that's not the end of the story. So basically, once the stability achieved, that's a key objective of the central bank and key mandate for us to maintain price stability and consumer stability, and also bring in confidence. That's where the almost completing the debt restructuring and being able to bring down the inflation on a much more sustainable low inflation, and also being able to build sufficient buffers in terms of resource. We have much more buffers for us to be able to meet any kind of unexpected shocks that can come from geopolitics, that can come from any other events somewhere else, and also the basically not having concerns of any future sovereign debt defaults or restoring government debt sustainability, and also implementing all the difficult, unpopular reforms and measures already done. I think going forward, if you compare the worries that I had then and had now, is significantly lower because of the issues that we had in the past. But I think going forward is now next phase of worries, probably how long we can, from this stability, how we can transform this into a much more recovery and growth going forward on a sustainable manner. I think foundations have been laid already. It's up to all the other stakeholders to take it forward to a higher growth path. And this is one of the sectors already I heard it's a huge potential for us to, when we move into a higher, more stable growth path, this is necessary after we come out of the crisis to recover at least output losses we had in the last 2 years, recover at least to certain, and also perform better than what we think in the next several years. So it's important for us to engage and continuous engaging in reforms, and easier to make business, like all the opportunities like for the export-oriented logistics services that we have advantage, and that's where have the full potential of the economy and have the benefits for the people. I think that's where next phase of recovery is more towards how to enhance our capacity to grow as a country and look at the opportunities in several areas. For example, one important connectivity and the both port, logistics, the road connectivity, energy connectivity, and digital connectivity. These are the areas that we need to work on. Obviously, I am happy that it's all are not responsible of central bank. This we will certainly maintain and deliver our mandate and ensure going forward stability would be maintained, and the rest comes with the people like the government, the other stakeholders, to bring in necessary reforms that will facilitate and enhance the growth of the country going forward. That's, I think, my take at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Veerasinghe. So you assure Mr. Masakurala will not have to again visit your office asking to allocate some dollars for the industry. Thank you very much. I next would like to move to Dr. Pandey. Jonathan mentioned this industry is always with governments, geopolitics, economics, efficiency, lean management, everything. And Sri Lanka, and I think Dr. Malini also mentioned the connectivity that we had throughout like centuries, India and Sri Lanka. But when it comes to geopolitics, let's agree there are some tensions in the region. And with the growth trajectory of India, why Sri Lanka is so important? And where do you put us on the geopolitical map with the maritime strategy in India? And how do you see that geopolitical world can help Sri Lanka to move on the maritime industry to the next stage?
Right. Thank you, John. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here and particularly be part of the panel on behalf of High Commission. I will try to answer your question in a manner that, the strategic location of Sri Lanka has already been mentioned. But I think what needs to be realized is that Sri Lanka and India, we are neighbors. And not just India, Sri Lanka, but Bangladesh, Myanmar, we are all part of the same region. This entire ocean space, maritime space around us, Indian Ocean, on our east, we have, as far as India is concerned, we have Andaman group of islands. On our west, as far as India is concerned, we have Lakshadweep. A bit down south, we have Maldives, Sri Lanka. We all share this part of Indian Ocean, through which passes almost 70 to 80% of trade lines of communication. Now, looking at Sri Lanka, how much of it you have been able to utilize of that business, and how much more can be utilized? Frankly, the answer to the latter, that how much more can be utilized, probably is infinite. And you have a country who's your neighbor as India, which has a 1,700 kilometers of coastline, a burgeoning economy at roughly 4 trillion close to, with a target of going to 30 trillion in 2047. Now, please remember that, in India, our 95% of our trade, and when I'm talking about 30 trillion economy, of which 10 trillion will be exports in the coming decades, 95% of that is through maritime route. And that maritime route will be from our eastern coast, will be from our western coast. And, well, to my mind, Sri Lanka is likely to benefit to the most. I mean, and not just the trade from India, apart from the transshipment from other, from the Africa or from Middle East or in the Southeast Asia. So, frankly, the world trade could be at Sri Lanka's feet. And the Indian possibility of growth is really for Sri Lanka to exploit and really make riches out of it. So, to my mind, the Indian story, the Indian potential, as well as Sri Lanka's location, the fact that we are together in this space, the fact that it is a responsibility to grow together in this space, should drive us together. A strong Sri Lanka, a rapidly developing Sri Lanka, a Sri Lanka which is economically strong, durable, is in India's interest. And likewise, a rapidly developing India is anything but it is always in Sri Lanka's interest. So it is not a function of strategic in terms of geopolitics necessarily. It is also a function, it is a reality of economics. It is a reality of business. And this conference being about business, investments, and economy, I would pitch the story of Sri Lanka as having the potential right at its doorsteps in the form of its neighbors and in the form of large and wide Indian Ocean.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. Since it's geopolitics, I'll come to the keynote speakers towards the next two questions, but I would like to move quickly to Dustin. Dustin, on the Indo-Pacific strategy of US, where do you see Sri Lanka and how we can get more benefits, and where do you see our growth story, of course, with the new developments in your parts of the world?
Thank you very much for having me. And I know I've met a number of you and you've heard my spiel about the Indo-Pacific strategy, so I'll try and keep it truncated. And along with my role as the Regional Indo-Pacific Strategy Coordinator. So my focus is on ports and port infrastructure, maritime domain awareness, maritime security, covering most of South Asia. And I'm also promoting the US Indo-Pacific Strategy, which is essentially promoting a free and open Indo-Pacific that is both connected and prosperous, secure and resilient. So what does that mean practically, specifically for Sri Lanka and economic growth? On prosperity, through the Colombo Plan, I see Dr. Benji is down here, we support capacity building for Sri Lanka Ports Authority staff. And we have the chairman in the front row as well. So we're focused on everything from communications and human resources to operational management and cybersecurity. We facilitated, along with Rohan as one of the organizers, study tours to the United States to visit U.S. port facilities, and we'll continue on these visits in the coming year. On resilience, we have arranged for advisors to work with the Sri Lanka Ports Authority in developing the Ports Greening Initiative. Now we're helping to develop a roadmap for sustainable development in Sri Lanka's ports, which would include renewable energy production, electric machinery, and measures to improve efficiency. I know the previous panels have talked about it, and some of the speakers have spoken about the fact that sustainability is a key element of the ports of the future. On security, we've organized security training, provided law enforcement training facilities. We provide radiological detection equipment to the Port of Colombo. And we've donated ships and planes to help Sri Lanka maintain a safe and free and open passageway for vessels traversing the Indian Ocean. And then on connectivity, we've organized regional workshops and seminars, drawing in experts and stakeholders from across South Asia to tackle common challenges and facilitate relationships among peers. Now, connectivity and collaboration has been another theme of the panels and discussions thus far. We see this as a very important element of the development of the port sector. The more that the port authorities have relationships with each other, the more they're sharing information, the more they're able to help each other when in time of need, and the more they can learn from best practices. So those are a few ways in which we are promoting the port sector, and specifically the port sector here in Sri Lanka through the Indo-Pacific strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dustin. Next, I would like to move to Jonathan. Afterwards, after Jonathan and after Dr. Malini's responses, I would like to come to the audience to get some questions. So I kindly request to be prepared, and then we'll raise hands, and then I'll be able to take 2 more questions, and I'll come back to the panel for the final round to best utilize the time. Jonathan, you mentioned you have been in this industry for about 27 years, and you are overlooking Asia for some time, and you said Sri Lanka is one of your personal favorite destinations. Let's say you go back to APM and you want to bring some investment to Sri Lanka. And governor assured that monetary stability will be there, there'll be no crisis. The governor of the Western Province assured that he wants to bring more, he wants to make sure that city is safe and more conducive environment for business. If you were to convince your board to bring more investment, and if you were also to convince our policymakers, our industry to do certain changes, policy reforms to bring more investment, what it would be? What changes that you need to see for you to convince your board and bring more investment, more presence in this region, bring more alliances, more connectivity in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, no, great question. So, I mean, one, we already invest here. We've been investing here a long time, and as I said, we would like to continue to invest here. I think, despite all the shocks and challenges that Sri Lanka itself has had, I think it's worthwhile to note the port's always operated, trade's always moved, right, in some very tough times, and I came back to. Focus on the term resilience. I think Sri Lanka has had a history of resilience. So that would be the first thing I would say. I would say the second thing is we have, I think, an opportunity for, we look where we believe we can bring something different and where we can create value. And I think here, as I mentioned, we're the largest operator of transshipment hubs globally. We have around half of those right now are automated. That's been a journey, I'll say. We've learned a lot since doing the first automated terminal. I'd say it didn't turn out the first couple years the way we wanted, but I think we've got that cracked now. And we've been able to stand up our last one in Tangier in a matter of less than 4 years from design to operation, fully automated. So I'd say, how can we reduce friction would be one. I think we'd have to look at, someone mentioned all the ITTs today. I mean, so that's a challenge, right? I mean, just the way this port is with the different terminals and the shape, it's a bit tough. So I would look for ways to get synergy across the terminals. I mean, just for one example, I mean, our terminal in Malaysia, PTP, so that's big on, obviously, the biggest hub we have. And that's over six kilometers of berth completely straight, right, with 67 cranes all in a row. And when you have that footprint, it's easier to operate. So I think somehow we need to look across the infrastructure and see how can we get more synergy across the terminals that are here. Would be one. I already mentioned, what could the country do to continue to stimulate FDI. It has, I think, a number of investors here that want to keep investing. So as it looks to the next phase in the port, how can it make sure that's attractive? I already spoke in my speech around some of the concessions around the world now coming up for tender, or I should say at the end of their term after the first BOT tender. And that would be one I'd look to say, how could the operators that are there continue in a good way for the country, continue to put money in now for the good of the country with all the change. What else? I would talk about sustainability. So I think here, I mean, this country has a phenomenal chance to grow tourism. I mean, as I said, what a fantastic country, right? So I think having a port that is green and sustainable, I think is really important for the country. So I would be looking at doing two things. I would be looking at bringing private money in to help produce green electricity. You've got a lot of sun, you've got a lot of wind, so how could that turn into energy that could be used for the port? And then I would be picking operators to operate your port that believe in green transition and are doing everything it can to move that forward. So I think it would take many things put together, but I think huge potential here. And I think, as I said, really excited just meeting the new folks in government. It was a real honor this week, and I leave very positive on the future for Sri Lanka. Look forward to bringing that message home.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Dr. Manley, in your presentation, you mentioned about so many components or puzzles in this block on making a maritime hub. How do you see, as an academic, has been working in this industry, especially on the decarbonization front, and also on connectivity? What else can be done to collaborate between Sri Lanka and India, or with the market opportunities, trends that you see, you study, for Sri Lanka to bring also, to do better?
So I think the previous session as well as the talks focus so much on maritime trade and investment, right? But there is another factor which comes into making a country a real maritime power, and that is the capacity building of human resources. And by this, I mean not just seafaring training for being seafarers, but also going beyond that and do research and development in various factors. So I think that's why we're looking really forward to collaborations taking shape and having more finite outcomes. Right now, we are collaborating with the Trincomalee University, Eastern University at Trincomalee. So if you look at shipping or maritime, people think of London and then they think of Singapore. Those are the two, and everybody is trying to measure up to, can we go anywhere near Singapore and London? And the third one is Norway. One of the things that studies show is that how do you create a maritime knowledge cluster? Because if you look at London has its own history of shipping going back to 200, 300 years. And Singapore is focused on trade, but Norway is another country which is focused on knowledge clusters. If we want to have an influence in the international, global arena, I think we need to have collaborations that will come up with, research, development, whether it is for logistics, whether it is for, scientific development. That's why I had mentioned in the address about tidal energy also. So collaborations will start small, they will grow slowly, but I think there is room for quickly identifying and having action plans on what should be the outcomes, whether it is in connectivity, whether it is in research, and making a difference in South Asia.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shankar. I think now it's your turn. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. I'm sure there'll be someone bringing you a microphone and you can quickly shoot a few questions. I would like to take about 2 questions in one row and then we'll hand it over to the panelists to respond to that. If you have any questions, I would like to, I think this is the opportunity to raise your questions. No questions? Surprised? Any questions from the audience? I'm sorry, I sometimes cannot see the 2 extreme corners, so if you have any questions, I think we can provide you the opportunity to ask those questions. All right, till you recollect your thoughts, I'll again quickly come back to the panel, and again, if we have time, I would like to get more questions from the audience. So it seems I'm doing a better job. I thought if I'm not doing a better job, maybe give the opportunity to you to ask questions. It seems I'm so far doing well. Moving back to Governor Yusuf, this government has made maritime industry as one of the thrust industries, main industries. And we all know this reform process is also not easy, and sometimes it will not make everyone happy. There will be winners and there will be losers. If you were to, I know this is not, as you mentioned, this is not your mandate, but let's imagine President Dissanayake knows that you know the industry and there are certain reforms that needs to be done, and he seeks your advice on what needs to be done on this industry. Prioritize about 4 things to make it a thrust industry. With your experience, how would you advise him? What needs to be done? And what would be the approach that you take? Like in terms of prioritization, you will first do this, second this, and third this. How would you respond to him in case if he seeks your advice? I hope he will.
Dharnath, I was a businessman in this trade. I have not changed. I'm not going to make any political situations. The reforms have been asked several times. It's not about making people happy or not happy. It's about making the country happy, making the people happy, doing the right thing for the country, land of missed opportunities, to get back fast, turn around this. Our neighbor India is a big ship, Dr. Shan. We are a small boat. We are like a speed boat. Little turn here and there, we can also go faster. But so the reforms that I would really want to do is, I always say that you can, I told the president already, you can have ports, you can manage ports, but you need ships to come. So you need to work with people who have ships, number 1. Number 2 is ease of doing business. We have been going down in our ranks. Why? What's the significance? I spoke to an ex-consultant of World Bank this morning, trying to help me to see how can I do within my mandate ease of doing business in my province. Make it a province that is very, very easy to do business. Thinking that would spill over to the central government. So, ease of doing business, corruption, that's the mandate. The president is for zero corruption, zero tolerance for corruption. That's the word he uses, zero tolerance. So if all this have to be done, said but must be done. So I'm sure they have a commitment. They would need help. Like you said, people would ask my advice, I would give them advice. The advice I've been giving to the industry for many years. The advice I've been giving to myself for so many years. The reason that I went expanded overseas into 40 countries, for what? I was just speaking to the government a little while ago. When can I use the amounts that we have? We have to go overseas and expand further. But before we do that, we are here to talk about the maritime and our hub here. And everybody knows what I've been advocating. Everybody knows what I've been pushing for. And what I'm trying to say is that stance has not changed. And this even talking about corruption and okay, President is committed digitalization, ministry to get things done. Ease of business hopefully will come that way. But if you ask my advice, I will stick to the advice that I've been advocating all the time. You have ease of doing business in this country. You will take away corruption from this country. You make this a livable place, you know. I always said, pardon me saying that to the Deputy High Commissioner of India, pardon me saying to Dr. Shankar, I may be Indian origin, but I'm a Sri Lankan. This is a great place to live, great place to do business. Headquarters, Jonathan, should be here. Headquarters must be here. We have great schools. I'm going to ensure that we have more open garden spaces. You know, we have some few things to do. I'm not going to lead us. We lost 74 trees last month. I'm disturbed. We want to make it a garden city, like Singapore is. So, what can I do at this situation? I can make it a livable place. Then people will come to invest. Make it easy to do business. Make it safe to do business. Make it a place that people can come, be encouraged to do business. Public-private partnerships should be freely done. So we're speaking to a leadership that everybody thought, and I must say this, as I always said. Palki Sharma always said we are a Marxist-Leninist government that we're trying to issue. In Frontline News, in Vantage News. I met the president before. I found nobody better than the private sector person I was speaking to. So, these are all words. I'm here, as I've always been advocating, to make this, take opportunity of a situation of a new administration to do the things that we always want to do, everybody in this room, and get that going, and in my lifetime, in the sunset time that I've got still left in this world, to get it done. And I'm asking here, I'm using this opportunity to talk to everybody here. Let's get together, cut the crap, and get things going, Dharma. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Yusuf. Thank you very much. Let's cut the crap. Any more questions from the audience? Yes, we have. Can we have a microphone? And we have more now. Excellent. I'm now doubtful about my job. Get more questions. But that's a better problem to have. We have one question at the front, second row. Yes, over to you.
Governor of Western Province, in your opening comments, you mentioned safety for women. It should be a safe place for women to work, especially in Colombo and the city limits. So at Colombo West International Terminal, we have aspirations of 30% women representation in non-stereotype jobs. And as you know, in the port, women representation is still a single digit. 7 years ago, Vilat, which you supported very much, got the CEOs of top 10 or 15 companies in the industry to sign up for women empowerment principles. And 7 years since then, we are still not seeing sufficient women in the port sector and industry. And some of the main hurdles are safety, because if we are to recruit women and get them to work in the night, we are referring to non-stereotype jobs, so not business development, not HR, not accountants, etc. We need to provide transport. We need to provide a female supervisor to sit with them while they are working. So these are the challenges that the private sector is coming across. But my question is, how would you, in your key priorities that you mentioned, you missed that, so I just want to bring focus there, because in your opening comment you mentioned it. And also for the rest of the people who are here, some of those CEOs are still in this room. Why is it that women have not come into key leadership roles in the industry? I'm not talking about where there is a shareholder who's a female. I'm not referring to that. But other ladies, what is holding us back? So this question is at policy level, how would you help for women to have a safe place? And secondly, the question is to the audience, why is it that we are not seeing women in the key positions still and non-stereotype roles?
Thank you very much. I'll take another question, Governor, and I'll come back to you. Any more questions? Yes.
This question is to central bank governor. As the custodian of the dollar, we are very well aware, it's an open secret, that border protection agencies, top-notch people, own mansions in Australia and around the world. I was wondering, how did those dollars leak out of the country, number one, very clearly, and we still feel 2/3 of the money that is supposed to be credited to the government coffers are still running around or filling pockets of the border protection agencies. And we have ample proof we can give you names, we can give you locations, we can give you Google Maps to even search this because of the Right to Information Act in those countries. But we feel there's a huge drain of ill-gotten money going out of the country, more than what some institutes say that exporters are not bringing their money back to the country, which we vehemently deny as exporters. I'm the chairman of the Sri Lanka Shippers Council. If we don't bring our dollars to the country, we won't be able to even survive. So, Governor, maybe it's even not a question, maybe something for you to think in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governor Yusuf, first.
Governor to answer first.
Sure.
And then I will get back to my milder questions that were asked from.
Sure. Governor?
I think this question, I take second part first, what you refer to broader public agencies have a lot of issues. I think basically there are several responsible agencies here. I refer to Minister of Port and this aviation and this SLPA and customs, all these agencies, I am sure these are the issues, is not new. These are the issues that we have known for long periods. And I think now we see a strong commitment by the new government to address, firstly, all these issues on the border protection agency, all other things. But when your first part of the question was that the statement that you made, a lot of people buying mansions, all this stuff abroad. I think how they have made that money sending abroad. I'm sure people who are engaged in the business also know that, how that's been done. So I can tell you, I think one example, when we had this foreign exchange crisis, I think Rohante can basically give evidence that during that period there was a shortage of foreign exchange. Obviously, as you said, exporters obviously have to bring that money here because otherwise they can't do the business. That I certainly don't want to, I had never taken the position that exporters are keeping their money abroad and doing business here is impossible thing. But they're bringing money. But when there are shortages, they're bringing money. And also they were using that export proceeds for different purposes. I think we all know that. That's how we brought in certain measures to prevent that money being sending back through Avala Undial systems and encourage to come into banking system. And that's how we manage that situation. At that time, that's how able to allocate properly the foreign exchange earnings by all the exporters, the hard work, and we also facilitated and without making any disturbances and facilitated smooth operation of export industry, even difficult times. But at the same time, the kind of financial flows going through different channels, we were able to bring that back into the banking system. That's how we were able to bring that channel. But there was statement on who is going to having this money abroad, who is having those information. I think there are agencies, if any information is available, obviously there are law enforcement agencies, police, all these CID, all these people, and also there are rules and regulations on the anti-money laundering, FIU. There are places that one can make complaint, and obviously if there's evidence, there are ways and means that you can basically take action. agencies who can take actions. But only thing is that I have seen a lot big statements saying that this is much money is abroad, but without any evidence, there's no point of talking about this without knowing properly where this money, who taken this money, who are the owners, how that has been taken. I think these are important information. If certainly welcome if you know that, please provide that information.
Thank you.
I'm sure that there are ways and means, especially with the new government, with more focus on addressing all these things. I think I'm sure there will be ways and means to do that.
Thank you, Governor Veerasinghe. Governor Yusuf.
Sean, you're the whistleblower now, so that's your job. Coming back to the question as to what's holding you back, the women, what's holding you back? Nothing is holding you back. We are holding you back. We have archive laws. The SAGT, I was talking about having crane operators, women crane operators. They managed to break that barrier. Took a time, but they broke the barrier. 15 crane operators, because they can't work in the nights. We have all laws that you can't work in the nights. Not because, talk the safety out. You can't work in nights, technically. The laws are old. So that's all, but all that has got changed. I remember when I started a call center business many years ago, 10 years ago, I had the same problem. Broke the barrier. But takes a little time, takes a little convincing, sandpapering on the whole thing, but coming back. For women empowered, what you can do. Actually, we have more women population than the men population. The Western province is 2% more women than men. We have got 6 million people, so we have about 51 or 52% women. And I always advocated, and Nirosa is here, she knows I always advocated. And I see Shiara here, I see Tanya here, I see you here. Buses are not safe. Trains are not safe for you. I thought it was 60% women harassment on trains. I was just told this morning through my analysis, 90%. So every time you get into a train or a bus, we have chance of harassment. It's quite a bit high. This is not only our country. Philippines has a problem. Philippines has got pink buses for women. So how do I change that? The mindset shift of strict laws. But coming back to you, I think this is something that we need to change. And you know what I'm going to do now? You asked that question, I'll give the ownership to you. You all are one of the women in logistics business. Gyne. Even I don't know what Gyne is, but you all come up with a solution how I can make transport safe for you. How can I make sure that when you get back from your workplaces, from the port, that you can go back safely? Shower those ideas with me, because we are just waiting to execute some of the ideas. Because we really want to make this place a safe place. Not that because we are just thinking it sounds good. It's a necessity for the future of this whole country. So please come up with ideas. Women should play a major role. Now the parliament, as you know, has got the highest number of women than before. That's what I'm told. I'm not I still don't know. You should know. You're the data man. You're the statistics man. You know information, which I don't know. But we have got that. That's a good start. Now grab that thing and fight it and take it forward. And let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Yusuf. Yes, please.
One important point from an economist point of view, if you look at this country, so without encouraging more women into labor force participation, I don't think we see a potential growth, because obviously this is not a country where we are behind the curve in terms of the demographics. We are no longer going to see a labor force increasing. That's kind of stable at some point. 35% only women in the labor force. So that's where, if we are to grow, that is where one of the important reforms is to encourage how women can participate more in the economic activities. Without that, it's one of the priority reforms, as you asked me question, is that I think one example I can tell you, there are certain industries that we have seen women participate much. I am proud to say Central Bank. Right from the deputy governors, assistant governors, head of departments, over 50% are now ladies. I think you can see change, and that's basically, there's a potential. And we need to encourage more women participation in economic activity.
Thank you, Governor Veerasinghe. We have about 9 more minutes, so I would like to ask Dr. Pandey and Dustin on the same question. I know India and US both have been great partners for Sri Lanka, and during the economic crisis, India stepped in and have been very kind on many fronts. I'm sure there must be still worries. What worries you about Sri Lanka even after the stability?
Well, again, I will not put it as concern for about Sri Lanka in India, but I would put it as a shared challenge, particularly in the space of maritime cooperation. So first of all, Sri Lanka's stability, Sri Lanka's rapidly developing status is most important. If Sri Lanka is unstable because of some crisis, I think it's a cause of worry for India, and not just India, for all the regional partners, but also other global partners of ours. So for sure, Sri Lanka's stability and Sri Lanka's durability in terms of economics is the most priority, important part. And that should naturally be concerning to all of us. And likewise, not just Sri Lanka, India's economic durability, India's growth, or Pakistan's or Myanmar's or Bangladesh, all of us in the region, we impact each other. This is the reality, and we will impact each other. And therefore, it is important for us to be collaborative in this. So again, in the maritime space, what are the challenges, particularly on the ports infrastructure? And this is a challenge which we also share with you. We have come some distance, a lot to go. So let's say 10 years back, our capacities, as Madam mentioned in her remarks, was only half in terms of container handling, and we have doubled it in the last 10 years. Our intention is to even more double by 2030. In terms of shipbuilding and repair, we were less than half around 10 years back, and we have doubled it. Now, that has come through a lot of policy stability, facilitative framework. So in terms of Sri Lanka, what probably, not concerned, but like India, probably Sri Lanka shares some of these challenges of policy stability, of facilitatory framework for businesses. Very important part, I think, what we have seen in large mega infrastructure projects when it comes to businesses is essentially their durability, their sustainability. And therefore, when it comes to that, sustainable financing, financing which is not debt creating, financing particularly which is private partnered and not a sovereign credit debt led, because large infrastructures require optimum business models. A major challenge for most of our countries which go into such particularly port infrastructure or airport or large infrastructure projects has been the optimum business models. Now, optimum business models start from the financing. They percolate into pricing mechanisms. They percolate into wastage of economy or leverages in terms of either corruption or in terms of bureaucracies or red tapeism. So, optimum business models, financing models. For example, Jonathan mentioned in his remarks about concessionaire agreement and how to transition after once they complete the tender process of 30 years. Now, finding the right balance. So, we are living in times of concern where the globally, both in terms of trade but also in terms of security, we are in a more challenged environment. I mean, you have the speakers have spoken about what has happened in the Gulf of Aden, or what we see in terms of Ukraine or Middle East, and these crises have all impacted us. Impacted us not just in terms of trade routes or commodity prices, but also impacted us in terms of challenges to our shipping lanes, also impacted us in terms of our maritime security. So you see that how a maritime security aspect really impinges upon your very, very business model. So non-traditional state actors in your space, in our shared space, sometimes geopolitical tensions between state actors, how are they impinging on us? So I don't think these are things which are, I will label them as concern for India or partners as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. I think these are shared concerns, and we are not separate in these concerns. We share them, and we have to work in a collaborative way. That's my short point. I don't think there's any issue of concern as far as Sri Lanka is concerned for India.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey. Justin, you want to add into that?
I would just, I'd want to point out that Sri Lanka currently plays an outsized role in the movement of cargo for South Asia because of the Port of Colombo and having the only major transshipment hub for the whole region. But there's a lot of development that's taking place in South Asia in the port sector. In India, you have Vizhinjam that's coming online that will be some level of competition for Port of Colombo. You have Galathea Bay that's in maybe still the planning process. In Bangladesh, you have the Bay Terminal at the port of Chittagong, you have Matarbari Port. Here in Sri Lanka, even Hambantota, they're looking to develop their own containerized transshipment capabilities. And then even in Maldives, that's a new port project they're starting to develop now to take over the services of Port of Male. So there's a lot happening in the region, in the port sector. Port of Colombo is about to double its capacity from about 7.5 million TEUs to 15 million TEUs in the next year and a half, with East Container Terminal and West Container Terminal coming online. But that's not enough. I think Port of Colombo needs to look at establishing their port community system for better communication, maybe a single window platform, and then, as mentioned before, sustainable development, like looking at ways to develop green hydrogen or other green fuels that can be provided to some of the ships that are now coming online that are either hybrid or focusing solely on using green fuels.
Thank you, Dustin. Next, I would like to move to Jonathan. Now, if you look at Sri Lankan crisis, there are multiple definitions. One said it's economic policy mismanagement. One also said it's a governance crisis. And since Governor Yusuf mentioned about the governance, the anti-corruption, since you mentioned that your industry has to work with multiple stakeholders, there's always, with big infrastructure projects, there's this concern about the governance because you have to work with government people, elected people, and there's also a global story now connecting on this industry. How serious is this governance business in the boardroom where you represent, and what measures you brought about the decarbonization issues, the cyber attacks, so many measures that you take consideration. How about governance and how private sector stands on good governance practices in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, so for sure a challenge. I think that's where we hope at Maersk and APM Terminals, we hope we can have a different value proposition. I talked about opening my speech today, the value of uprightness. I can say from the boardroom of Maersk Group to the boardroom of APM Terminals, that's what it is. And that means we'll miss some opportunities, I'm sure, but we're okay with that. Because, I mean, as I said, we're in this, our biggest customer is a country. That's the main customer. And we want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way, because that's good for the country. And it's good for us, too. We don't go there. So it's prevalent. But I think, again, when it comes time to choose partners, I hope that would be one consideration that, governments give. Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan. Dr. Shankar, final thoughts on how Sri Lanka, because this is all about Sri Lanka making a maritime hub. With your academic studies, what else can be done in terms of policy reforms to connect onto the maritime route? What is your final recommendations to Sri Lanka and the government and the industry?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to suggest policy recommendations for Sri Lanka. I think that those are diplomatic channels where talks take place. There's Indo-Sri Lankan, bilateral discussions, etc. But I would just like to leave a thought behind, which is businesses normally think short term, and governments need to think medium to long term. So if you look at the countries around the world which succeed, they have a strategy, and that strategy cannot be just short term. The latest I've read, and it's nothing to do with, it's got something to do with maritime also. Saudi Arabia, for example, it says, I read this very interesting article which says that they realize that they cannot put all their nests in oil economy for the future. So they are focusing on something that you never even thought of, which is tourism. I mean, when I think of Saudi Arabia, I think of deserts, right? And not very attractive deserts like Sahara. But if you look at their campaigns, it's tourism. The second thing they've gone for is sports. This is why have you ever thought of Saudi Arabia going into sports? But they have bought over a football team, very, very popular football team. They have franchises in IPL cricket. They hosted the Masters year-end Masters tennis tournament there. Now, I have nothing to do with Saudi Arabia, but I found that this is very interesting. That is strategy that we need to think of. Where do we stand 10 years to 20 years from now? Not just as on paper saying this is 2030 plan or 2047 plan, but what is it we want to do in the region? Who are our partners? What is our goals? And they are not short-term goals. Businesses have bottom lines. Businesses have short-term goals. But we need to have long-term goals. Like Indo-Pacific Initiative, which was one of the primary initiatives of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, talks about people-to-people contacts. Do we have, I think we need to increase the people-to-people contacts because that builds bridges between nations. Governments talk at a certain level, but people. This classmate I spoke about, she actually is Sri Lankan and she came to Chennai to study. She spent 3 years in the college and it was under the, I think government of India was giving scholarships. And she says that my love for India and all the people who came from Maldives and Sri Lanka to study, the love for India comes from the 3 years that the government financed their studies and spent 3 years knowing the people. I think people-to-people contact and long-term policies would definitely benefit the region.
Thank you, Dr. Shankar. With that, people-to-people contact, connectivity, investment, governance, geopolitics, women's safety in cities, and with monetary stability and a stable dollar, I would like to wrap up this conversation. Please put your hands together to Dr. Malini Shankar, Jonathan Goldner, Governor Hanif Yusuf, Governor Nandalal Veerasinghe, Dr. Satyajal Pandey, and Dustin Bakel. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you too, Dhananath. You've done amazingly in covering a wide range and increase the scope of this conversation. Now we have Aramex, who's our main sponsor for the event. They have already handed over some gifts to the panelists, but those that remain, we're going to have them handed now. Thank you very much. For those who are not receiving gifts, you can watch if you like, but the idea is, like it says in our national anthem, Yamu Yamu Vi Nopama. Food and refreshment waits. Tarry no longer. But do remember, tomorrow 8:30 a.m. sessions start. You need to be back here 8:30. But enjoy the evening.